So this is going to be a little bit of a different video about the state of trade, the AFL media, and my role as a content creator. Let's get into it. Now, this is not scripted. I don't know where this video is going, but I just have a lot of thoughts around the trade period. Again, my role as a content creator, specifically a Collingwood content creator. And I want to give you two prime examples of just where we are with all of this media coverage. So we're going to start with a tweet / article from John Ralph. Actually, before we get into that, I want to talk about just trade media in general. Right? We'll get to that John Ralph thing in a second. Now, we know that it is a 24/7 media cycle, and AFL is just so big, and the supporter base is just so big. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, just all these, Twitter as well, where tweets can go viral and everyone's looking for sort of clickbait. You'll have one headline, you click into the article, and it's just something totally different. Now, how I sort of run my Instagram account, I wouldn't say very picky with what I post. I usually post everything that I sort of see that has, credibility, or if it's been talked about quite a while, like with injuries and stuff like that. Trade media is a little bit different. Like, there's this tweet from John Ralph about Jordan Goey that I haven't posted yet as I'm recording this, because I just don't think it's worthy of a post, because it just doesn't make sense. We'll get into that in a second. And then there's an article about Nick Daicos from Cal Toomey that was talked about on Trade Radio that we will talk about as a second example, that I haven't posted yet as I'm recording this, because I don't think there needs to be fuel to the fire of that. But I do want to talk about it and why they're so different, and why one has merit and one doesn't have merit. Now, my role as a content creator, and that was talking about Instagram, more about YouTube, is, look, this is obviously where I make most of my living, off of YouTube. So that's, with AdSense and stuff like that. And it's just, it's so easy for me if I was to say, oh, Nick Daicos' name has been, is up as a trade. And then bang, clickbait, I'll make a 10-minute video about that and I can get money from that, right? But that's not what that's not what I want to do as a content creator. I need more than that. So I thought it would be a good idea to do this video about the two different ways that the AFL media works, and how or like my process thoughts going through it. See, stuff like, I put up a video about Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. Would he be a good fit for Collingwood? He wasn't linked to the Pies, but it's more of a think piece, right? Now look, let's stop me talking. Let's look at the first article about Jordan De Goey. Now, John Ralph tweeted this today, which is Tuesday, October 7th. He says, Pie star remaining committed despite speculation. Jordan De Goey remains committed to Collingwood despite trade week speculation about his future. As of right now, there has been no speculation, no talk about Jordan De Goey moving clubs, or any rumors that I have seen from anyone else. Back in 2022, definitely, when he was, I'm looking at as a free agent and before he signed his contract extension, 100%, there was so many Jordan De Goey articles and rumors. St Kilda came to him with a lot of money. But as of today, in 2025, there has been nothing. And this article goes on to say, it is understood the Saints have not made contact with Jordan De Goey or his management since the 2022 free agency decision that saw him close to signing with St Kilda before recommitting to the Pies. And then you can see this tweet from John Ralph here that has a link to the article. No one has talked about this. He even says it in the article that St Kilda haven't talked to De Goey. And this is where I get frustrated with the AFL media and, trying to stay relevant when trade radio or the trades have sort of dried up a little bit because clubs are talking to each other. There's no backing. There's no, Jordan De Goey is looking for his club. There's no management talk about Jordan De Goey looking for another club. St Kilda haven't even come out and talked to him. And look, they might, but as of right now, he's saying that it's reached fever pitch. I just feel like that is just totally made up. Now, journos, when there's smoke, there's fire. I've always sort of said that. And some journos do it a lot better than other journos. And I'm not here to pot journos. That's their job, right? When there's smoke, there's fire. Same with the sort of like the Bobby Hill sort of stuff that's been going on for a few weeks as well. But this is one example of something that I wouldn't make a video on because there's just nothing to talk about. And this is why I didn't post about it, because there's just nothing to talk about here. It's literally a nothing story, and just a story to get, in my opinion, to get people clicking the article, interacting with the post, getting engagement to Code Sports or Herald Sun, wherever this was sort of posted. And this tweet would have made sense in 2022 when there was speculation and talks. But as of now, there's just none. So like a nothing story from nothing. That's like me saying, yeah, someone posting an article about Swoop Luke, right? And saying, oh, Swoop isn't planning on going to Subway for dinner. There's been no talks about going to Subway. It's like, yeah, like why do you, it's nothing. I didn't think about going to Subway for dinner. Why you don't have to say something that's not happening, right? Does that make sense? Like that's just one side of the media, and we've seen it a lot of times with a lot of different clubs. Obviously, I'm really tuned into Collingwood, and this is all just me talking about Collingwood and stuff like that. But it's happened to numerous clubs, and that's just one sort of piece of trade radio that just doesn't make sense to me, and it's just to keep names, clicks, and engagement in the headline. Now, the second one I want to talk about is Cal Toomey's talk about Nick Daicos and clubs coming for the superstar.
Over the past week, my understanding is multiple clubs have reached out both directly to Nick Daicos and to his management about any interest he would have about a move. So he has not been driving this. Clubs have reached out, including directly to the player, to gauge his interest. He, of course, is signed until the end of 2029. So I'm not saying Collingwood would in any way entertain this. I'm not saying that he's pushing for a trade. I'm not saying that he's going to be traded. But to have clubs reach out to him and to his management shows the world we are now in, whereby nothing and nobody is off limits.
Now, this one to me makes a little bit more sense. But again, if you read the article and not just the clickbait headline, there's been no indication that Nick wants to leave or anything like that, or that he's even contacting these clubs to leave, right? But we'll look at the it's going to pop up here. Multiple clubs have reportedly reached out directly to Nick Daicos and his management over the past week regarding the possibility of a trade move. He goes on to say that Nick Daicos hasn't driven any of the contact, and there is no prospect for a trade. So literally only speculation. Clubs would be absolutely stupid not to ask the question of whether a superstar who's still contracted would be wanting to move clubs, right? We understand that, and that's just where we are as a footballing media society. With Tasmania coming in, there was an article a couple of weeks ago about Nick Daicos could be the first $5 million man if he takes up a position at Tasmania when they come in 27 or 28, whenever they're coming in, if they're still coming in, right? Genuinely, I feel like that is an okay article to write, because it's saying, look, the possibility of this, you could say it about 1,000 different players, but of course, as a Collingwood supporter and as Collingwood, you generate more clicks and more engagement when there's a Collingwood person linked to it. Now, Cal goes on to say, to have clubs reach out to him and his management shows the world we are now in, whereby nothing and nobody is off limits, and a competition view that anything can be prized open. It must be said that's been denied. Toomey said it was noteworthy that clubs were now willing to be almost brazen about pursuing high-end talent. And that makes so much sense to me, right? Yes, it's got Collingwood's name and the biggest person in the game being talked about for engagement, but I feel like this is so much different to the John Ralph tweet, which just came from absolutely nowhere, which seemingly seems made up. But this Cal Toomey one about Nick Daicos, it's saying more about clubs contacting superstars to come to their club and seeing if they're open for a move, as opposed to Nick wants to move, if that makes sense. So I feel like if you're looking at A and B, with A being John Ralph's and B being Cal Toomey's talk is a little bit more nuanced about the AFL world and the landscape of player management and clubs. Like, we probably looked at Jai Simpkin. Hawthorn was asked a question about Zach Merritt. And, it just happens all the time. Clayton Oliver's a little bit different because Melbourne said look for another club. But I'm sure Collingwood as well has asked 100 different superstars if they're willing to move, even though they're contracted, even though that their name hasn't been bandied up in the trade period. So I'm not, too worried about this article, but I have had so many people DM me on Instagram. Is Nick moving? Have you seen this? And, obviously for right now, he's not moving, but you would be dumb as a club as 17 other clubs not to ask the question. I think he's free agency in 2029, so he'll be a free agent around then. So expect his name to be bandied up at the end of 2028, where he's a pre-agent. We talked about pre-agency with Zach Butters as well. So I just think that as a consumer of a lot of AFL media, myself personally, and you watching, we love the trade speculation, and we love when it happens with our club getting linked to big names. And, there's not even a name linked to Nick Daicos, or sorry, a club linked to Nick Daicos at the moment. But then you look at the John Ralph tweet again, and you're like, this is chalk and cheese. One's, again, talking about the nuance of the AFL world and clubs now not being afraid of contracts or anything like this. And then you look at the John Ralph tweet and you go, this just came from, what do you mean? Like, this is a fever pitch. No one has talked about it. And as I'm recording this at 5:48 p.m. Tuesday, October 7, there has been nothing talked about. Nick Daicos isn't going to leave Collingwood. Jordan De Goey's name, this is the only time it's been linked to another club in the last 3 or 4 years. So there's no need to worry about it. And I just wanted to come on, give you my 2 cents about, what it's like making content during the trade period and the pieces that I do want to talk about, the pieces that I sort of won't make a video about. And just where I stand on the AFL media coverage at the moment. Is trade period a little bit too long? And do we always need to talk during dead space? I don't think so. But again, this is all AFL media driven. This is, trade radio and stuff. It's all AFL media. And it goes from 6 till 5 or something ridiculous like that. They need to keep talking about it all the time because that's just the state of media at the moment. So just, keep one eye on the tweets, keep one ear to the ground to see what is going on. But just wanted to give you my quick 2 cents about it. I wasn't going to make a video, but I thought, I got a lot of thoughts about it and how I do my content and how I post on Instagram, stuff like that. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of insight about that as well. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about AFL media and trade radio and all this stuff and the media just being 24/7? Let me know down below. But until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shackers, I'll swoop you later.